Okay, so my first question is, what is your name?
My name is Casey Warren. Those are my initials, KC.
Okay. Okay, so when did you move to Evergreen?
I moved to Evergreen in the summer of 1988.
Okay. Why did you choose to move to Evergreen?
I had been living in New York, in Brooklyn actually, very close to the Central Park of Brooklyn, Prospect Park. So I grew up in Memphis, but I lived way out east. And when I moved back, I wanted to live near the park because I really liked that in New York, and I wanted to be able to walk places. So I chose Evergreen mainly because of the park.
Okay, can you describe what the neighborhood was like back then?
The neighborhood was pretty much the same. We have the historic housing rules, so we can't really change the way the houses look. On this street in particular, there were less younger children. There were more old people some of whom, my neighbor over there had grown up in that house, and she was an old lady, so her parents had died, and she had lived there her whole life. And she was pretty much blind, and she would sit in her yard, and she could feel the weeds. So she would just sit down on her bottom and pull things that didn't feel right, and then she would move to another place and pull. So I was always very fascinated with Miss Hall. And there was another lady on the street who had also grown up on the street, so that was kind of crazy.
That is crazy. Were they how old would they have been? Were they the first residents in that house?
Probably.
Wow.
Probably their parents were the first residents. And people still remembered things like, I would see somebody in the grocery store, and they would say, "Oh, you're back in Memphis, where do you live?" And I would say, well, first we lived on McLean, and then we moved back here 2 years later. I would just tell them my address, and they would say, "Oh, the Hutter house." So people remembered that the Hutters had lived here for a really long time, and it was called the Hutter house. And we were, I guess, just the third family to live in this house.
Wow. Okay, so what were some of the challenges at that time, of the neighborhood?
I guess the same challenges now is that it's mixed, and there are people who kind of wander around at night. There have always been people who will go through your car, or maybe go through your garage if you leave the back open. So there is the same thing, but I was moving here from New York, so I was totally used to that kind of urban situation where there were people walking around, and it just seemed like what it's like in a city.
Okay, so how has the neighborhood changed?
Like I said, there's more younger kids because I think the older people have died off and new families have moved in, which is super fun. My kids didn't have as many people their age on the street as you guys have, I think. And how has it changed? The Shell is a super fun addition. But now I'm worried about the fact that my job here when I came was working at the art college, so I'm a fan of the art college, and now it's about to close, and what will happen to the Brooks Museum, which was one of the first places I worked when I was in high school. So it seems like there's about to be another big shift, but the Shell wasn't. People were starting to organize with this thing called Save Our Shell. And also all the activism that happened around the zoo parking. The zoo had always parked on that field, but recently people got upset about it and protested, and I feel like there was a compromise, and they're going to quit parking on our field, so that's good. But I can't think of other changes.
So you moved here in 88, and that was when you wrote your thing up, do you remember what year the Supreme Court, they all got resolved with I-40? That was almost 20 years before that, wasn't it?
Yeah. So those new houses were not built when I moved here. I forgot about that.
So was it just empty lots down
There
there?
were
or-
just vacant lots everywhere, and it was very exciting when they built new houses, and that that brought a lot more people to the neighborhood. And then I feel like maybe shopping got better. There were just more people. But the sort of sad things, I'm thinking of things that where the new Kroger is now in Union was an old grocery store called Cecil's that was a Memphis family, and they had very special, I think what people mainly remember are their desserts.
Mm.
And so it's kind of, I still call it the Cecil's Kroger, and it was a great grocery store, so that was kind of sad. And then over here, there was a place called John Gray's, where this very elderly man who ended up living in the Parkview and walked to work every day. It's over where Fantastic Sam's is now on Madison and he would walk, and he was a butcher, so it was his butcher shop, but they also sold a lot of tasty food. So I guess shops come and go. More restaurants now than there used to be.
Okay. What are some of the challenges facing the neighborhood today?
I think there's still just the sort of petty crime that people worry about and that might keep people from moving here. And then, like I said, the worry about what will fill in at the park when those two big things that have been sort of anchors for the neighborhood go away. And they're about to build some apartments right across the street on Poplar. So what will that do to our neighborhood? I feel like traffic has kind of stayed the same, but it may be about to get bad.
Okay. What is something you like about living here?
I love knowing my neighbors. I love that all many houses have porches, and so people sit outside and people walk, and you just get to know people. I see you guys going to school in the morning, and I like seeing the other kids walking to school. That's just a nice thing to see, kids from the neighborhood. And I like, being able to walk to the Shell and walk to the park, walk to Echo, to eat dinner. I grew up out east, and I had some friends who lived in Midtown, and I thought that was the cool place to live. I always wanted to come to Midtown, so now I'm kind of living the dream that I had when I was maybe 16. All the cool theaters were in town, so I was all in the cool stores. I was always begging my mom, "Can I go to Midtown? Can I go to Midtown?" And there were rules about how, what time I had to come home and all this stuff. So, I have a lot of happy memories from high school about all the fun stuff that. Overton Park was Overton Square was a very big deal then, and then it kind of went through a period of nothing going on, and now it's back. So, I was always dying to go there. So, I'm super happy to be living in Midtown. And we're thinking, my oldest son has come back, and he lives in this duplex next door.
Oh, does he? I didn't know that. Okay.
So he's been back about 2 years, and he and his wife are going to have a baby any day. She's due on the 10th of September.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. So eventually we're thinking, when we bought that duplex, we said, we checked with the city, and they said it's not historical. If we wanted to tear it down, we could. It wouldn't be like tearing down this house, because that house was just built in the 70s because Miss Hutter from the Hutter House, her husband had died, and she was scared that she would run out of money. So she had always owned this lot next door. She just built that place and started renting it. So the neighbors said it came up very fast. So we're thinking maybe we will tear that down, because it's not that beautiful, and build a little bungalow where we can all, my husband and I can live on one floor, and we could get old right here on Buena Vista.
Wow. That's very cool.
So that's how much we like it. We want to stay on the street. I used to think I'd move into the Parkview, but that place needs a lot of work.
Does it?
Have you ever bbeen in there?
I've been in there.
Well, it looks very grand in the
Mhm.
lobby, but the windows are very old. My father-in-law lived in there. They just rattle.
Oh, I suppose they're up high and they get a lot of wind and yeah.
And if you're on the top floor, you have no water pressure.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they've had bed bugs, so I'm like, maybe I'll just move over here.
Yeah, I've thought about it for my parents. I'm like, but we'll have to investigate further should we need that at some point. But
It was so perfect for my father-in-law. He could look out his window and see if we were home.
Oh, wow.
See the cars. So then he'd be calling us up. I need a roll of paper towels. Send one of the boys over. But yeah, I think there's more competition now, and there seem to be less people over there. I don't know what's going on. And this was neighborhood activism that might have been gone bad. Right when we moved on the street, they wanted to put a care for people who, like a nursing home facility over there. But, so that means that people could have moved in and then gotten so sick they needed to be in a nursing home. So we said, heck no, we're not going to have all these ambulances here. And they wanted to put a curb cut and come out onto our street. And so the whole street protested, and we were not going to have that. And now I'm thinking that probably would have been a good thing to do.
yeah.
It would have kept that building, because a lot of old people want to move someplace and not move again. So I think that I kind of regret that.
Yeah. I think I read about that. So I read, when he got assigned this, I went and found the Evergreen. On the page, there's that, 80-page history or whatever that somebody had written. I'm sure you've seen it or whatever. That's
Well, I
the history of the
certainly have
name.
not read the 80 pages.
I didn't read the whole thing either, but I skimmed it and I read about that. I'm like, I didn't know about that. That's interesting. So
Very cool. I feel like our neighbors are very engaged, and they know what's going on, and they feel powerful to change stuff. And when there's an election, people put signs up everywhere. And I've heard that our neighborhood has a higher voting than almost any neighborhood in Memphis.
wow.
So we're super engaged residents.
That's Evergreen in general.
Evergreen in general, the people that vote over there at Trinity Methodist, like a huge percentage compared to the rest of the city, vote. And we also vote very liberally. We vote, they said, like a district in Boston. That's what somebody told me. I'm like, okay.
That's funny. Do you have any more questions?
No?
Is that it?
Yeah. So
Okay.
thank you for letting me interview you.
Well, I'm so happy that you wanted to interview me. I'm remembering those old ladies who lived on the street when I moved in, and thinking, now I'm one. Only I didn't quite grow up.
As I was saying, you're not to the point where you're weeding blonde.